Alright, let's just get on with it. As expected, with Ubisoft abruptly delisting Beyond Good and Evil on several storefronts, they have now finally announced the remaster, which is titled Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition. It's coming very soon on June 25th, which should be out by the time I record this video. As the name implies, it's to celebrate the 20th anniversary since the game first launched, which is in fact false, as the game actually came out on November 11, 2003 in North America for the PS2, so technically it's the 21st anniversary and someone at Ubisoft messed up the timing. Anyway, the game is a remaster with additional features to make the game more accessible for modern consoles and potentially determine whether Ubisoft shall continue working on a prequel or scrap it altogether. Who knows by this point? The game will feature 4K 60 FPS with updated graphics, remapped controls, and updated audio with 15 songs re-recorded with live orchestra. Let's start with improvements. Besides the higher frame rate and resolution, players no longer need to worry about manual saving as the game will automatically save it for you. Cutscene skip, which is I'm so happy about, is finally here. Imagine dying and having to rewatch the cutscenes over and over again. Yeah, it's not fun. Then we have full control support, including keyboard and mouse, elastic cross save across platforms. As for new features, the game has added a speedrun mode, a treasure hunt, behind the scenes content, and updated achievements. And according to the official website, speedrun mode is just what it sounds like, but you're not allowed to save when you're playing in the mode. But what stood out to me the most, actually, is the treasure hunt and behind the scenes content. It's a whole new feature that added to bridge the gap between Beyond Good and Evil 1 and 2, since the second game is technically taking place in the past. Another reason I believe we might get a teaser for Beyond Good and Evil 2 in the way they phrase it, secret unleashed content. It got me thinking it might be a similar fashion as the Sly Cooper HD collection on PS3, where if you 100% all three games, you unlock a teaser for what will become Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. I hope and I want the remaster to be good, but knowing it's Ubisoft, I'm a bit pessimistic. Moving on, we have Sony skipping Gamescom again. Yeah, it's really surprising to anybody at this point. I can't actually remember the last time Sony attended the German Games Conference, and the change in industry, seeing as E3 is dead and gaming companies realizing instead of having to rush to have something ready for the E3 period, they can just hold their own events and reveal something when they feel like it. Same with Nintendo, as they have announced they won't attend either. However, that doesn't mean they will have a presence, seeing as Jeff Keighley will be attending the German Games Conference once again and share more game trailers he didn't do during the Summer Games Fest. And if we look at previous track record, Sony has always had one or two trailers that gave it green light for Jeff to reveal. I wouldn't put my hopes up of letting Jeff reveal something major like a Ghost of Tsushima 2, but I'm thinking more like along the lines of a DLC expansion or a PC port from one of the premier flagship AAA titles. So, for our next piece of news, in an interview with GameIndustry.biz, Sean Layden, the former chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios, who is now an advisor for companies like Tencent Games, Streamline Media Group, and more, discussed how the games industry can save the cost of making games. And this is what Sean had to say in response to his prediction back in 2020, where he warned about the rising cost of development. And I quote, "Sadly, thus my heart has no good that I think I was right," Layden tells us. It wasn't any great prediction, we're just watching the trend lines over 25 years of gaming. The numbers only go in one direction, games don't get any cheaper, they don't get shorter, they get more complex, they get become more costly. The large blockbuster, when people are swinging for the fences, they're coming at 150 to 250 million brackets, and that is a huge burden on the game development business model, on the publishers for carrying that, and that led to some of the contraction in the marketplace that we've seen. Then he proceeds to discuss some of the solutions, breaking that down to four things: time, game length, photorealism, and optimization. In regards to time and game length, he had this to say: We live in a world where only 32% of gamers actually finish the game, so we're making a lot of games that are 68% of the people that aren't seeing, later explains. So should we continue to build games that are unlikely for most of the people to ever see the end of it? It costs to build the end. You can tighten up that. If you can make your games on a shorter timeline that will reduce your cost, it get you to the market faster. You can please your customers sooner rather than always selling them to wait another 4 to 5 years for your next opus. I think we just have to re-examine how we present ourselves and the games for the gaming public. It was such a big deal in the early days of gaming, in the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 generations. Length was like your top review point. You kept judging games by how much gameplay you get for your dollar. And maybe that was a decent metric back in the times when the average gamer was late teens, early 20s, which mean they were time rich and money poor. So having to sit down for that long of a session, get through some of the huge RPGs seems reasonable. I just think now that the average age of gamers approaching early 30s, get the flip. They're more money rich and time poor. You have to really kind of strap on some free time if you're going to sit down with Red Dead Redemption 2 and get through that. Then in terms of photorealism, he wishes for game studios and developers to stop chasing photorealism and should be asking themselves, does it actually improve the gameplay, story? He further expands on how game devs can automate the process and his stance on AI. Sean sees AI as a tool to help make the process quicker, but doesn't believe it will start making games because it's using what already exists, but does not create new things we haven't seen before. Using MLB The Show as an example, it's a game that releases every 9 months and is using the same characters, 32 teams, stadiums, and so forth. And you can say it's lazy, boring, and not innovative, but that's the point. Knowing you can save time by reusing assets and having a tight deadline to help developers identify variables they can tweak, add, or remove for the next entry, and plan ahead to introduce a new feature, instead of something like, let's say, Last of Us Part 2, where you put all of the features they want into one game, but as a consequence, it takes 5 to 6 years and costs a lot more. It's fascinating hearing the mindset of former chairman for Sony, knowing that, he worked for the company at the head of the table, more or less, seeing the process from the inside and knowing what's going on. And I do agree with a lot of his points as I've become older, especially with this generation of consoles. I find photorealism to be saturated. I don't find it wrong for AAA studios to chase it, but as I've grown older and tried a lot of different genres of games, I want more variation, shorter games, and most of all, take risks. Like Sean said, I would rather have a shorter game with limited features, but knowing the sequel comes out in 2 to 3 years, I'd happily wait rather than wait 5 to 6 years. And I think publishers are now starting to reevaluate their strategy, seeing how we had so many layoffs in recent years. It's not fun to hear or experience, but if it results in the games industry getting to a point where we can see the return of short style games like Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, and Ratchet, then I'm for it. And as much as I would like to break down all of what Sean said, it's too much for one video. I'll link the interview in the description box and then try to add it in the top right corner, but it's time to move on to our last and final topic. Sly Cooper and the Thieves Raccoonus becomes the biggest hit for PlayStation Premium in the month of June, beating out the previous title holder, Legend of Raccoon, by 2.5% in its launch week, while also seeing 40% more PS5 and PS4 active users. This comes from True Trophies in collaboration with Game Insights. Using over 3.1 million active PlayStation Network accounts, tracking games that has been added to PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium catalog, including Sly 1, Tomb Raider Legends, and Star Wars The Clone Wars. Granted, it's still far behind Data Diver and Red Dead Redemption 2, with only being the 8th biggest PlayStation Plus game of the year so far. 85% difference to be exact between Sly and Dave the Diver. However, the data also reveals, in comparison to the other newly debuted PS2 games, is by far the best actively played game, beating out Tomb Raider Legends by 40% on both the PS4 and PS5 during the same week period. Still though, 3.1 million is a relatively low number in comparison to the 118 million monthly active users across PS3, PS4, and PS5. While it not may be the biggest hit for Sony, It does tell us that it remains one of PlayStation Classic and has the power to attract more subscribers and sales, showing there's an audience enough, in my opinion, to make Sony at least consider making a new Sly game. As with the last time we saw our Master Thieves was in 2013, with the release of Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, published by Sony and developed by Sansuri Games. The game didn't reach the sales expectations and the franchise left on a cliffhanger, which still annoys me to this day. And then we had the movie that got announced but silently got scrapped in 2016. While it's only the first game in the series, I can't imagine what numbers the sequels will reach once they arrive on PS Plus Premium subscription. While it's not confirmed, but seeing its success, Sony should have the sequels lined up in coming months, and I'm here for it. I actually never thought I would see the day I would see one of my favorite PlayStation mascots and one of my favorite PlayStation games of all time be playable on modern consoles, and seeing the success it's having gives me hope Sly and the gang might get a last dance, but I'm still pessimistic. And yeah, this is everything for I have for this week. As usual, let me know what you liked, disliked, and see ya when I see ya.